Dwight Howard is one of the headliners to be a nominee for the class of the 2025 Basketball Hall of Fame. So I definitely feel that Dwight Howard deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. He's a legit Hall of Famer. I just remember when he first got drafted, an interesting fact about Dwight Howard to me is that he was the last great player in my eyes. I'm going to say keyword last great player in my eyes to come straight out of high school to the NBA. A year later, they would end the right for players to come from high school to the NBA. So he was like the last great player to come out of high school to straight to the NBA to make that jump. And and he took advantage of that. He was a solid player even during his rookie year. You just knew he was going to be a great player. He was averaging just a double-double in the first year of his career. So that set the tone for what would be a great career for Dwight Howard. I would say that when you look at his game offensively, he was decent when it came to being a post-up big man, but he wasn't great. His post-up moves were always kind of wobbly and kind of shaky. His footwork wasn't the best. Grant, he did get better at it as his career progressed, but he was never really great in the paint when it came to footwork and whatnot. But once he got position, he was pretty strong and able to just run over guys just whenever he got the positioning. He didn't really have much of a jump shot. Just most of his points were in the paint from post-ups or dunks or putbacks. That was really his offensive game. It was limited because he didn't really have a go-to move to turn to. So I think that was the biggest weakness, was really lack of an arsenal when it came to his offensive game, I would say. But defensively is where he really excelled. Just that's where I think he makes his case as one of the all-time greats in this game. This guy was a rebounding monster. He had about 3 seasons where he averaged 14 or more rebounds, which is impressive. Very few guys can get that many rebounds. So he was able to do that. And I believe he won Defensive Player of the Year more than once, if I'm not mistaken. I know he won it at least once. I'm just trying to see here if I could find it. Yeah, 3 times Defensive Player of the Year. Insanely ridiculous. He led the league in blocks twice. He was like the block leader. So that's impressive. Really, his defense was really what made him a force. His offensive game was decent, and then you combine that with the defense, and he was a great player. You look at just his biggest success in my eyes, I think in everybody's eyes, was when he was with the Orlando Magic. That he made them relevant again after they had endured a stretch of being irrelevant after Shaq had left them. And he was able to resurrect the franchise. During the late 2000s, they went on a run where they had 4 straight seasons of 50 wins or more, which is impressive in my eyes. If a team can get at least 50 wins, it doesn't matter the era. That's a sign of being a good team. That to me is always a benchmark. And Dwight's Magic had that benchmark for 4 straight seasons. In those 4 seasons during the late 2000s, early 2010s, he was able to lead the Magic to 4 straight playoff appearances. They were able to get to the conference finals twice, get out of the first round 3 times, and get to the NBA finals once. That's a great stretch for any player, I would say. For most players, that's a great stretch. Obviously, they're like the top 10 all-time greats. That's nothing. But just for a regular player, that's a great stretch. Heck, for just a regular franchise, that's a great stretch. That may not be a great stretch for like the Los Angeles Lakers or Boston Celtics, but for just about any other franchise, they would love to have that stretch where you get to a few conference finals, you get 1 NBA finals appearance. That's an amazing stretch. That's enough to get a player's jersey retired for most teams. So that was the best stretch of his career in my eyes. Just that was when he was great. I would say the most notable moment during that stretch was when he beat LeBron in the 2009 playoffs in not the Western Conference Finals, Eastern Conference Finals. I think his Magic took them out in like 5 or 6 games. That was an amazing series in which he carved up the Cavs, and he exposed one weakness of LeBron's game in that series, which was that LeBron never liked playing against teams that had great interior defenders. That was the one weakness of LeBron. If you had a great interior rim protector, you could contain LeBron in his prime, pair it up with a good wing defender, and that was just his kryptonite. And Dwight exposed that in that series. He was amazing. And just one thing that was amazing about that series was just how they had surrounded him with shooters like Rashard Lewis that could hit threes, that were just knocked down. Hito Turkoglu. That team was a lot of fun. They would double and triple team Dwight, and those guys would just punish other teams with their 3-point shooting. It was prolific back then. Fun to watch back then since it wasn't common for a team to hit a bunch of threes. So that team was very exciting to watch. They would fall short in the finals when they would play the Los Angeles Lakers. They would lose in 5 games. But just a fun stretch if you're a Magic fan. And after that, that's when things started to fall apart. Dwight would eventually force his way out of the Magic. He would get traded to the Lakers, which really was his downfall. Just that's when things came crashing down. I felt he made the mistake of coming back too early from what I believe was, I think, a back injury. Kobe pressured him. He rushed back. And you could clearly see that he wasn't the same player after that. Just he was limited to some degree. Things didn't work out. The Lakers lost in the first round to the Spurs. They got swept. Embarrassing moment by Dwight because he was getting played by old man Tim Duncan back then, who was way past his prime, but embarrassed Dwight in that series. So he went out looking embarrassed, and I still remember him getting ejected out of the elimination game. That was very comical. Then he leaves the Los Angeles Lakers. He goes to Houston, and you think he's going to resurrect his career and go through a rejuvenation, but it didn't work out, that pairing with James Harden. I felt that Dwight was unfortunate to play with ball-dominant players after he left Orlando and Kobe and James Harden. Those type of players are never good when it comes to play. If you're a big man, they limit your production of what you could truly be. And I think he was kind of limited on the offensive end, even more so than he was in Orlando when he played with those guys. So it was a terrible match, a terrible pairing. It didn't end well. And that's when he started switching from team to team. He went to Atlanta, Charlotte, Washington, then back to the Lakers. He had a redeeming moment during another stretch with the Lakers during that bubble championship where he played a role in stopping a young Nikola Jokic, who wasn't fully the MVP player he was today. But I definitely believe the Lakers could not have won that series against the Nuggets back in 2020 without him. He was great at stopping Jokic, so he was great at that. And then he ended his career with the Lakers a few years later, coming back, and that stint was very poor. It didn't work out for him. And just after that, it's just been a lot of embarrassing moments off the court, such as allegedly violating guys inappropriately. Won't go into details. He went to court about that. So that's a bad look for him when you think about the off-court stuff. And there's other stuff about him off the court, what he's done. Just he's not a good guy when you read about the stuff he's done off the court. I would say, just going back to basketball, one thing I think that held Dwight back was from being just a truly probably maybe a top 20 all-time great. I would say it's just his demeanor of always being a goofball, just joking around, not taking things seriously, always laughing and giggling. He didn't have that competitive edge that you'd want out of just an MVP-like player. He just didn't have it. And I think that held him back to a large degree. It made people lose respect for him, whether it was his teammates or opponents. He didn't strike fear into opponents with that goofiness. And then when it came to just his teammates, he wasn't a great leader that they could get behind. So that was the biggest weakness, I would say, of him. Just that, and just his offensive skills were not that developed. So, but with all that, I definitely believe he's a Hall of Famer. He should be in the Hall of Fame. We'll see if he gets in. I think his off-court stuff could hold him back from being in the Hall of Fame, but we'll see. But he definitely deserves it. He had a great career. I would say the second greatest Orlando Magic player of all time after Shaquille O'Neal. So that's how I view Dwight Howard.